Hello again. First and foremost, I want to show you a little bit of the Google Maps that I recorded, just to understand where we are. So this is the Labor Square. That's where we basically finished the previous tour. That's the Labor Palace, or the former palace of Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich. If you move closer if you go straight ahead, there will be the Annunciation Bridge across the Neva River, and that's the pink house that used to be the old and old restaurant at the turn of the 20th century. But we need to go to the, I would say, quite inconspicuous, unassuming street. Uh, Hold on a second. Let me turn off the sound over here. Quite distracting. It's called the Galerne Street, and it's just the street parallel to the opulent English embankment. But this street is very narrow, as you can see, so there's no public transport. There's just very little parking, I would say. And when cars park from two sides, like it's just absolutely impossible to navigate with two cars. Only one car can go through. But no, anyway, so, and you will see that um, all these buildings here, they don't really look very opulent. That's mainly because they are the backside of big palaces that are facing the river and the embankment. And most, I would say, like black, kind of the back entrances, they would normally be used by the servants or different institutions. Well, they would be entrances to different institutions. So this street kind of, at first glance, doesn't really have a lot to impress you with. And who would have thought? Well, so the building we're looking at now, this yellow one, is actually that opera building that we are visiting today. But let me first walk you through this street. It's going to be very quick. I'm just screen recording the Google Maps here. It's a long street. Yeah, this is this photo taken during the Soviet times. Nothing special, I would say. Not much decoration here. Well, you see, well, yeah, just typical St. Petersburg street. It looks lovely, nice, but I mean, there's nothing here for a tourist eye, not, well, nothing I would say too impressive. But well, okay, the archway is quite impressive, but it's more impressive from the other side. And if you remember, the English embankment started by the St. Ives Cathedral, and and also from the famous monument to Peter the Great, Bronze Horseman. But if you look around, you'll see this opulent building of the Synod and the Senate, and that famous archway that connects the two buildings, the two ministries together. So, and straight forward. So from there goes straight ahead goes the Galerne Street. So this is just kind of for you to understand where we are. So for 2 hours today, we've been roaming around one and the same area. So that's the monument to Peter the Great. To the right-hand side from us starts the English embankment, and we are kind of parallel to the English embankment. We're going to be exploring this unassuming yellow building with the archway. Well, but what's there inside, you just don't expect a building that looks like that to look like that from the inside. So opera. So it's written there, opera in Russian, but you kind of have an idea. And you can visit it. Like they have operas every weekend. They have more concerts. You can easily join. But if you want to see all the interiors, you need to book. Like on the first day of every month, they like put up for sale about 30 tickets maximum for a guided tour, and they get sold out very quickly. And they're mostly sold out by St. Petersburg because tourists normally don't know about this building because it's small. You will see it's a very small building, and it looks small, and it is small. So yeah, it's a bit challenging, but Oleg managed to do that. And even when you enter, you're not really startled by these interiors. Everything looks very reserved. Well, there's not so much here, right? So normally we know that in big tenant houses, lobbies should always startle you. Like the way you enter, you should be impressed because you judge a book by the cover, right? But this building is different. It just opens itself and it unfolds as a good story. So the climax is yet to come, but we're already hooked. But we are just kind of curious to know what's going on there, what's more there is for us to see. But the lobby looks very simple, I would say. For St. Petersburg, for a St. Petersburg theater, it looks like, come on, what is that? Okay, yeah, we have some plaster work. So what? Everything looks nice and clean and neat. That's because the restoration was completed about a decade ago only, and it was a very good scientific restoration. And this house only deserved such restoration. By the way, the theater is a very good one. So I was mistaken. I thought, and I had to, well, I'm really sorry for the mistake. I thought it was a private theater. I was sure. And when I did some fact checking before the tour, I realized that I was wrong, and it's actually a municipal theater, opera theater. And it actually, what you're looking at is, I would say, the kind of the Oscar in the Russian theater scene. So this this theater has won four golden masks. So it's like four Oscars basically. But that's a big deal. So the house belonged to von Derwies family. Well, von Derwies can be spelled in different ways, but the right way is the way you do it in German. So von Derwies family was a prominent family with German roots. And the first, the biggest, I would say the most important family member was Paul von Derwies. He was I would say the founder, so to speak, of the dynasty in in St. Petersburg, and well, his father came to St. Petersburg in the very end of the in the 1700s, in the 18th century. I don't know exactly when, and von Derwies just managed to be there at the right place at the right time. And he, in the 1800s, in the 1830s, started investing the family capitals into the railroad construction. And this is how he became very quickly, in less than a decade already, he became one of the richest men in the country. In the country. So, and he owned a lot of real estate. Only in the English embankment, by the way, they owned four houses. The English embankment, one of the most expensive and opulent areas for well, for very, very, very affluent families. So from there is owned uh, four buildings only in this embankment, and just imagine how much more they owned in other areas. Oh, good. And well, Paul van Dervis. He had a wife, Vera von Derwies, and several children. I'll be talking about the children later on, but after Paul von Derwies passed away, this particular house was inherited by one of his sons, Sergei Pavlovich von Derwies. So Sergei von Derwies, Pavlovich is a patronymic name because his father was Pavel or Paul von Derwies. So Sergei got this house, and he basically was the sole owner of this place, and he indeed lived in this house. And Sergei turned it into a musical and theater salon. But to add more theatrical vibe to it, he asked the architect Paul Schreiber to revamp a lot of interiors. So this part of the house was kind of the old one. So many buildings in St. Petersburg mm, went through multiple changes and reconstruction. So this is not exception. But from here, kind of from this not impressive, unassuming, lovely lobby, you can already see something really off. So let's go and explore. Um, Oh, we will see several interiors, and one is, I would say, looks very different from the other. And well, after you see one interior, you think, okay, there's nothing more that can impress me, and then all of a sudden you see more and more and more. Well, welcome to the underwater cave, so to speak, something like. Originally, it was a winter garden, like winter orchard, which was always amongst in every fully fledged St. Petersburg mansion in the 19th century. So these changes took place in 1880s already, after Paul von Dervis passed away, and his son Sergei inherited it. And I mean, well, look at all his interiors. So on the one hand, you see a lot of uh, shells, right? And the shells would normally decorate the grottos, and the grottos had to be in every fully fledged residence, in big palaces. They had to be the shells that they kind of represent the underwater kingdom of Poseidon, something like that. And on the other hand, you see all these stalactites, stalactite. I keep confusing the two, but you gotta have the idea, right? What I'm talking about. So it feels like you are in a cave. So, and it looks so whimsical. Those are actual shells. I mean, those are real shells. And then all these tiles, and then you see these gemstones, um, like what is going on there, right? So this is the restored interior. It looked exactly like this when the palace was rebuilt in the 1880s. And because at that time it was already the period of eclectic, and Art Nouveau started slowly coming into its own, but it's more like still eclectic. So you see this interesting combo, and no wonder that during the times of Sergei, who was the son of Paul, so Sergei von Derwies, there were a lot of different performances held in this former orchard as well. He was a big fan of theaters, and he was an amateur actor himself. So Sergei was also um, well, he wasn't a musical prodigy, but he could play several musical instruments, and he was quite a good composer. He himself authored a couple of operas, even. So I think this house was just meant to become an opera himself. Paul van der Ries, so the founding father, so to speak, of this rich dynasty, he uh, well, he did everything possible to provide his sons with the best education, his children with the best education. He never spent funds on that. He also purchased a lot of real estate, not only in St. Petersburg, but in the entire country and also abroad. For example, in Nice, you can find the Villa Valrose. I'm not sure how to read that. Well, anyway, this villa is still there, and I believe it now houses an educational facility. I mean, Villa Valrose, I guess. Valrose, Valrose, I don't know. I mean, look at this. I mean, it's still there. I think it's an educational facility. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, and then another grotto, because it wasn't just a big trend, and they just had to follow the trend. And also, uh, Paul van der Ries, after several crises in his life, it was not an easy life. He eventually decided to leave Russia, and he lived for about a decade altogether. He stayed in France. Uh, He separated from his wife and distanced himself even from several children. But Sergei, the one who inherited the opera house, he also lived in Europe. So uh, Sergei was raised in Europe and he was raised in France and he was given the best education possible. So he came to Russia only after Paul passed away, and he um he came as a European. So he didn't consider himself Russian. But when Paul von Derwies lived in Europe after a chain of crisis, I would say, he commissioned to build a Russian pavilion, like a Russian house, like an izba. So that's why just next to this beautiful villa, Val Rosé, Valley Rosé, you can find the Russian hut, the Russian izba, like a log cabin. Interesting, I know, but I guess he just got homesick, so to speak. So what happened to the father? So I'm trying to kind of mix it, both the interiors, the house itself, and the story of the family, because the story is quite interesting. It was one of the richest families, as I said, in the empire, but it's also one of the one of the unhappiest ones, because uh, it didn't really matter how much money they had. Unfortunately, they couldn't save their children. So two sons passed away in their infancy, and nothing helped. Nothing. Absolutely, they couldn't do anything. Children would be just dying one after another. So there were two sons that passed away one after another, and that completely set him off. So that's why Paul von Derwies had to leave the country. He had his two other sons with him. He had his daughter with him. He separated from his wife, and he lived in Europe. So he lived in that villa. Then he moved to Nice, to another villa, and he left several more villas. And then Maria, the only daughter that he had, so he doted her completely, and she passed away from the bone tuberculosis. Just imagine that. No money could save the little girl. Well, not a little girl. I mean, she was 16 when she passed away. And when the girl passed away, uh, Paul von Derwies uh, was standing at the railway station in France with the coffin where his dead daughter was. And while he was waiting for the train, he collapsed. He had a heart attack and he died just there at the train station. Just imagine that. So his son, upon getting the news, Sergei, whose portrait you're seeing over there, I'm so sorry, for some reason the English caption is missing. So Sergei von Derwies, he uh, packed everything and rushed back to Saint Petersburg with the bodies both of his sister and his father. And he had to deal with the burials and everything. So, but von Derwies, to their sons and daughter, are buried in Russia, but in Moscow, by the way. Another room, which is the Moorish room. Again, this house kind of meets all the requirements for the proper, uh, super expensive, super posh palace. And again, you don't expect anything like this to see if you see the way the building looks from the outside, right? That's quite unexpected. Quite unexpected. Well, the Moorish room, it kind of was a smoking room, but it was just the trend. It wasn't used as a smoking room, but it was a trend to build a smoking room and to design it in the Moorish style. The fireplace is original. The wall decorations are original. The house actually didn't suffer much during the war, during the Soviet times. No, it remained a theater for a long time. Uh, well, not throughout the Soviet period, but for a long time it remained a theater after the after the collapse of the empire. I mean, look at these walls. Look at this. This is the embossed leather and metal details. Uh, just look at all these patterns. Obviously, the color. I mean, it's been restored because it didn't look like it didn't look like that when the theater moved in. Obviously, many details were missing, and it was just well, it wasn't in use also for some time. You see a shisha there, right? Because it's kind of a smoking room, but I'm not even sure if it was used by Sergei Pavlovich as a smoking room. But it was definitely used as a lounge, as well, just a place to chill. And it's all gold that glitters. I guess I don't have to remind you of that. And Moorish is because it was a big trend. We already know it very well. So this is a coffee jar. Um, Look at all these details. Look at the carvings, the carved doors, and the doors are original. They just had to be restored. And this room has a harp. It's also used as one of the so-called the small concert rooms. So this opera, it's a very small building, so they don't really house thousands of people and the hundreds of people. Actually, the biggest hall only accommodates 170 people, like 72 maybe. And there are several smaller rooms for very, very small scale concerts, like teeny tiny. But imagine just how cozy it gets. And they claim that every room has the best acoustics. That's what Sergei Pavlovich uh, sought after because he wanted to turn his palace into a theater. He was a very musical man himself, so he wanted his house to have good acoustics. Also in the interiors of this room, he they added elements of their coat of arms, of the monogram of the family. So the stars, well, the heart, and I mean, this family comes from Germany originally. And also here in the shield, it looks like there's something written in Arabic, but actually to me it looks more even like Hebrew than Arabic, but it's gibberish. I mean, it means nothing. It's just the stylization of something Arabic, just because it's a Moorish room, you kind of have an idea. And there is a very silly story in connection with that. I will tell it to you. I will tell it to you now. So, unfortunately, I have never really seen an opera here, a performance here, but I was on an excursion. I was on a tour of this opera. I think even before Grisha was born. That is before 2016. And we were told, and I still remember this, so many, so many years later, I still remember it. So Sergei Pavlovich, that's him again, Sergei von Derwies, who inherited this house from his father. So as I said, he was very much into music in different ways. So he composed music. He wrote himself several operas. I don't know if he could sing. I've never really seen that information, but he definitely played several musical instruments. He was married twice, and that's his second wife, by the way. Um, this photo was taken in the 1890s, already in this very house, by the way, in another room, however. You will recognize it once you see it. So, and he had enough funds. He had inherited a lot of money. So alongside with the rebuilding of this palace, also commissioned to build a huge estate in the Ryazan district of the Russian Empire, not so far from Moscow. And that's what he commissioned to build. Looks like a castle. I mean, it looks whimsical, dreamy, but it looks kind of like a castle. So another eclectic chef-d'oeuvre of my favorite, one of my most favorite architects, Fyodor Shechtel. I did a series of tours of his buildings in Moscow, well, because Oleg uh, would go back and forth in summer. Well, he would basically was kind of lived between Saint Petersburg and Moscow, so he filmed quite a lot for us. Plus, I have since I lived in Moscow for 6 years, something, yeah, around 6 years. I have a lot of photographs of different areas, so I'm also sharing a lot. I also shared a lot from my camera roll. The further Shakhtar also built him this palace, but there wasn't really enough money. So at some point, the financial advisors of Sergei von Derwies just told him that he had to stop because he was just throwing the money around, building several residences at one at the same time, and making the budget just skyrocket because he wanted to have the most expensive materials. He wanted to have the best acoustics. He wanted to have the best furniture, the best architects, and everything. Well, but the funny story is that hold on a second. So let's go back to this Moorish room. So I told you that that inscription on the shield was just gibberish. Um, on the floor, there was also written um, an inscription in Arabic, which you can by the way find in a lot in many places in mosques, on the ceilings or above the doorways. So there is no other god than Allah, and it was on the floor. So we were told on the tour back then when I was in the palace myself that that Sergei von Dervis, he wasn't, well, he was well educated and everything, so definitely this must have happened just because he didn't know these things. But that was an inscription on the floor. And one day he was expecting a delegation from an Arab country, but it was told by a museum worker, so I don't think it was a legend. I think it actually did happen. So the story has it that when the delegation saw this inscription on the floor, they didn't enter the room, and the deal didn't take place at all. So that kind of shows you that he was not exact. Well, he just maybe it just because he didn't know these details. I mean, he was a European man, so he didn't know much. And it could have been just a mistake of the architect who had no idea what he was doing anyway. So that didn't happen. But you can't say that he wasn't shrewd enough. He did manage to eventually sort things out with the money, and he managed to sell the estates, and he didn't go broke. In fact, he left the country exactly on time after the 1905 revolution. So, well, which was ignited by the Bloody Sunday and everything, and it didn't result into the dethroning of Nicholas II. It resulted into, I would say, the restriction of the absolute monarchy and a lot of I would say liberties granted to people. So it kind of looked like good times and things were looking up. But Pondervis kind of he sensed something and he decided to go back to France. He's buried in Nice together with his second wife. By the way, that's his grave. I don't remember the name of the cemetery. I'm so sorry. But that's the family burial vault in the cemetery, and it looks like a Russian terem. So I'm sure you won't miss it. If you go there, you won't miss it. Another room here is this small passageway. Normally, guests would just pass this room from the Moorish chill out room, so to speak, to a gallery. The amazing thing is that all these paintings, all these painting that you see on the walls, this is not a canvas. It's leather and silk. Some of these panels are leather, some of these panels are silk. I'm so sorry, and they just painted on it. It's painted on silk and painted on leather, and they are original. They just need a little bit of touch up, and they're back on their spot. All these wooden panels, they are all hand carved and they are original. They needed really mild restoration. But they still needed it. I mean, look at all these details. Like how, right? Just like how. And the butterflies, they were here from the very beginning. These butterflies had been there. I mean, just look at all this work. So the combination of several kinds of wood together, I mean, amazing, just amazing. So it was just a small passage room. The only thing is that the restorers couldn't find, couldn't identify what was there, what was in the ceiling. Obviously, a room like that had to have a decoration, but they couldn't save it. They couldn't identify, so they just decided to do the ceiling the way they did. Other than that, I would say that this passage room is quite spectacular as well. And it's just the passage room. And now we are in the former gallery, art gallery, obviously. And when I was in this room, it looked like this. It looked just like a small room. You see the two harps there. So this room was also used as a small concert room. And well, it looked quite lovely and there was a lot of light because it was meant to be the home gallery. And all these walls that are empty now, they were supposed to be, and there were artworks uh, mounted, hanging. And the ceiling was there to add the daylight because there was always shortage of light in St. Petersburg. So the daylight is crucial to see the artworks, and obviously Van Derwies knew that. So he asked the architect to make the ceiling, to make the glass ceiling. But this room wasn't of this size when it was built. It was 3 times as big. In fact, what happened to these rooms, what happened to this house during the Soviet period is that the house was kind of the rooms were cut uh, because it was like there were also communal apartments here and there were several institutions, so they kind of split several rooms. And originally, well, I mean, when the opera building moved in, the opera moved in, that's what they had, just a small room. But well, at some point, I had no idea. I have no idea when. Uh, so the state administration kind of managed to enlarge, so kind of take over one more room, and they took down that wall, and now the room is bigger, and it's also a small, kind of a small stage. There are two harps, well, just the same harps basically, and also a piano. So small, small concerts, small scale concerts are held here. Well, Sergei Pavlovich had a good taste for artworks, so there was also, I would say, big chunk of his paycheck was definitely to cover all his whimsies and all the artwork that he had been purchasing. I mean, it was he played it big. He dreamt big, and everything in this room was designed. I mean, this room has very modest interiors. That's because nothing had to um, distract you from observing the artwork. So what you see here is, I would say, something very mild, and the walls are empty because there had to be artworks there hanging. You can see these panels with the lions. So these are the panels you could see in the photo where Sergei was playing with his wife, playing the piano with his wife. But anyway, so um, what can I say? So that part of the room wasn't there, right? So where the stage now, it's the new room, and I mean it's great. I was surprised. I didn't expect that at all. So who knows? Maybe next time I take you here, maybe we'll see more. Who knows? And also, by the way, so the stage is new. This stage was built at some point, I don't know, so it's not original. Other than that, so the cheers are obviously not original, but the cheers, even the cheers have the monogram of the von Dervis family. You see, it's a very small hall. Well, I'm not even sure how many people can be accommodated there. No idea. but not so many as you can see. So it's all very small, very cozy. And you see, for well, here, for example, there is a clearly a doorway that was sealed in the Soviet times. So there is still a room that belongs, well, by some organization. I have no idea. Many organizations that are housed on the Galerna Street on the embankment, we don't really know the names of them. And many of them are no-name organizations, meaning that they are somehow affiliated by the state or something, this kind of thing. Anyway, this is kind of a memorial part. This is the part of the living room and that, well, sorry, not the living room, the dining room, sorry. So this is the part of the dining room, and this is the buffet, the cupboard that belonged to the family, the von Dervis family, and the table and the chairs are also from the dining room. Quite spectacular. There are not so many memorial items, unfortunately, and it's not a museum actually. So, but they try to fill the room with the items from the same time period. So that's not so bad. And then we need to go to the main room, which is the concert hall, and the way to that room is through this what do you call it? Goodness gracious. Through the, not the ghetto, the grotto. Sorry. Through the ghetto, through the grotto. And I mean, this is the Baroque of the Baroque. And since this was, so I think these tours are held at, at noon time. I don't remember when I think I went there. It was not noon time, but I mean, I went there like many years ago, about 10 years ago. So, yeah, definitely more than 10 years ago, even because that was way before my son was born. So, yeah, definitely. And it was morning, it was like around 12 o'clock. So that they even caught the rehearsal on the stage, which is totally fine. But look at the room. And this photo, by the way, was taken in 1918. I found it in one of the archives. I'm, I cannot read the banner. Well, but this is kind of for you to show that at least in 1918 and actually in the 1920s, this this palace was used as a concert hall still. So Sergei Pavlovich, after 1905, he sold this house and he sold everything, all the property, and left for France, where he passed away much, much later. So, but the good thing is that his idea of turning this house into a theatrical venue kind of lived on. For example, this photo was taken in 1900, and that was a big evening celebrating the big drama theater that came to St. Petersburg from Moscow. That was a big evening, so there was a big celebration. So this is like theatrical society of St. Petersburg gathered in this hall, and there were tables there. So it wasn't a theater event; it was like a celebration. But everything here was to to impress from the very beginning. Goodness gracious! Oh, there's an interesting story about this ceiling. It was hidden under the layers of the Soviet paint, and the restorers they managed to uncover it, and they discovered this beautiful sky with the larks in it, and I don't know, like looks like a vanilla sky to be honest to me. So as I said, altogether 170 something seats with the coat of arms of the von Derwies family. So von Derwies are not forgotten at all. My favorite detail, which you don't see because of all this, because of all these limelights, is this. So the muses and I mean you see it's a theater because you could see the comedy and the drama over there. And this is gorgeous. What can I say? I'm still amazed how it was possible for a municipal theater to get the state to restore it, but I guess that's because there is in St. Petersburg there is a definitely this respect towards theater, and we know that after Sergei von Derwies sold this house, so the theatrical life went on in the palace, and the prominent Russian theater director Всеволод Merhold, who obviously was of Jewish descent, he uh, he kind of took charge of a small theater company and he opened the interlude theater in this palace. It was an experimental theater, but like, you know, meaning well. It was very popular. It was highly praised by many contemporaries. It was always well, it was always a sold out, but it's not really rocket science to sell out 170 tickets. But if it's a bad play, well, it's probably difficult even to sell one. But it was always a sold out. Merhold himself played in a lot of performances. This is him rehearsing for one of the performances. He was very good. He was exceptionally good. Eventually, he went to Moscow and he worked in Moscow in several theaters, and he was a big star. He was well one of the best theater directors in Russia and beyond. Honestly, needless to say that in the 1930s things went sour for him. But before that he had the glory and by the way, this is the real footage. We don't really have a lot of photographs of what happened in the von Dervis Palace in the 1920s. So this is like one of very few photos that I have been able to find. So not so much. And In the 1930s, Mir Hall, together with his wife, they were persecuted. He was put to jail, and well, you kind of have an idea. And then he just perished in the camps. That's basically it. And for a long time, we had no idea what exactly happened to Vsevolod Mirhold. Actually, I guess Mirhold was such an amazing theater director that it might, I don't know, I might even have to do a virtual tour about him, or maybe I should ask Misha to do that. We'll find out. We'll see. Anyway, so some more photographs taken in the 1900s, and well, let's get back. So now, while we're still in this room, well, I like this cupid. They're like chubby cherubs. I mean, looking all this cute, all these ladies, all these caryatids. I mean, like it screams wealth. It hits you in the face, and I honestly have no idea how you can just keep focusing on the play while you have all these um, naked ladies, looking at you and everything. But obviously, I'm joking. But nevertheless, I also mentioned that there were other children. So actually, the two sons survived. So Sergei, you already know of. So let's talk a little bit more about another son, Pavel von Derwies. Pavel von Derwies remained with his mother Vera, and well, after Paul von Derwies passed away, next to the body of his daughter, and also two other sons passed away in their infancy, way before that. So Pavel remained, he was Pavel Pavlovich, he was named after his father. He remained with his mom. He also lived in Europe, but then he came to Russia and he stayed with Vera von Derwies. He also inherited several houses, and he in 1916 he kind of knew what was happening, what was going on in the country, and even before that. So he came from but his family was of a German descent. And when the First World War broke out in 1914, well, even the city was renamed to sound more Russian and to sound less German. So a lot of German, uh, well, people with German background, the German names or German companies had to either close down, leave, or change their names. And that's what Van Dervis decided to do. So Derwies from German can be translated as a meadow. So he took the last name Lugavoy, which means Lug means meadow. So he's kind of a he became Paul Meadow, Pavel Lugavoy. Since we don't translate last name, so Lugavoy, that's what it sounds in Russian. And he um he gave away a lot of his wealth to the state. And so when the revolution, and some of it he had been able to sell before the revolution, and it was like 1916. So these people, they were really shrewd. Well, he could have been a bit shrewder, but nevertheless. So in 1916, by 1916, he hadn't had much property, so he hadn't really been, I would say, there wasn't really much to take from him when the nationalization started after the October Revolution of 1917, so like the following year. And what he did before that. So what I forgot to say is that when his father passed away and he had inherited money and real estate, he lived with his mom for some time. When his mom passed away, Vera passed away, he left St. Petersburg and he remained in the Ryazan region, and he started breeding horses. And he became a very good horse breeder. So he built like a big horse breeding facility, and he also lived there. So it was his residence and a big horse breeding facility. The horses that were bred there were of the top quality, like top standard, very good, very expensive. So it was a very good business. But as I said, later on, well, when things started to go sour, he had to sell a lot of property. Well, and do I have to say that Further Chef also built the the stables and well, just look at this. By the way, it's still the horse breeding facility, still in Razan region. These are not my photos. I have never been there, so I just found them online. I mean, it looks like a castle. So the place is called Starozhilsky Konezavod. It's like the horse facility in the it's kind of a village. It's kind of a settlement called Starozhili. So it's kind of Starozhili horse breeding facility. That's basically it. I don't know the other translation for it. And it looks like a castle to me. So that happened to be both the facility and also that's where he lived. And by 1917, he had nothing. He had sold everything, so there wasn't really much to take from him. And he, for some time, remained in Starozhili. He had always been on very good terms with the people who worked for him. So when the Red came after him, he moved from Stelagiri. He went to Moscow. He was told, like some people that worked for him back in the past, they told him that somebody was coming after him. Someone from the Bolsheviks were coming after him. So he fled to Moscow. He stayed in Moscow. He eventually, while the Minister of Enlightenment, Minister of Education, Lunacharsky, was alive, he was kind of untouchable. He was, I don't know, he was given some protection, so to speak. So he wasn't touched by anyone. And then when Lunacharsky passed away, so again, they started pressing on him. and he escaped from Moscow to one of the neighbor, well, to the village, not in the next to where his horse breeding facility used to be. And this is where he met his second wife, and not the second, sorry, the fourth wife already. So he had had four wives altogether. I mean, one after another, not simultaneously. And this is the photo. So he ended up living in a village, and it's just amazing how he survived. So several times there were attempts to persecute him, to put him into jail and send him to labor camps, but it was always either he would be just a step ahead of the game. He was well, like someone would just pass on the information to him, and he would have enough time to escape, or just people, protected him because he had always been kind to everyone who had ever worked for him, and he had been extremely generous too. So he met his wife in that village that he went to, and this is his family, and it's amazing to see the faces of the people. So his wife looks like a, well, I would say an average woman, from a village. Well, just an average, like just I'm not saying if it's good or bad. I'm just saying, and you see his face. So I mean, he looks so different, right? Like so, but he was happily married. He had a good life, and he was just, had he not sold everything away and had he not given all his funds later on away to the state, he would have been he would have been done with, I think, even before 1920. So, but that didn't happen. So that's why we called him Russian Monte Cristo, I would say. Well, this is the photo of him. But also for some time, by the way, he taught mathematics at school. Yes, and some of his former children, former, not the children, but some of the children that he used to teach, they eventually would become some, officials in Moscow, and that's also what one of the people just put in a word for him, and so all the persecution was kind of put on hold against him. So this is interesting how it worked. And this is, well, as I said, this opera theater is a local gem, and it's a very off-beaten spot. Like definitely tourists are not taken there, and it's not so easy to get in, as I say. So they put up for sale like 30 tickets maximum, and you have to be there on the first day of every month, like, to be there on the website to buy it. So that's what we had to do with Oleg. We had to do it like simultaneously. I was trying to buy it. He was trying to, eventually I was able to buy it, and then he went. So it was just, I would say we were lucky to have been able to film there. But again, obviously I wish I had I wish I had seen at least something in in this building. Well, but I haven't done it yet. So maybe I will at some point. Who knows? I so desperately want to go back, but obviously it's not an option at the moment. So this is it, a very, very, very unassuming building in a very unassuming street that has a lot to impress us with. And we know what kind of opulent rooms in some of those palaces are. And I only wish that more buildings would be open to us. But as I told, well, most of the facilities there are kind of classified or private property, like some business entities that's definitely not letting just anyone in. Okay, this is it. Let me turn on the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. So well, on tours like that, I kind of realized that actually there is still so much that I haven't shown you about my city, and I'm so grateful that I have a chance to do it at least like this. So I'm sharing here some links again. So in 1 hour from now, I'm looking forward to catching up with you all in the Stone Island of St. Petersburg to see some more whimsical country houses of Russian nobility. and merchants. And then I'm taking you to Alexandria Romanov residence in Peterhof. Today we are wrapping up with a cottage and exploring the farmer's palace. I don't think that farmers in St. Petersburg also have their palaces. It's a little bit different, but yes, it's called the farmer's palace. And exactly that's what it's called. Hi, Dolly. Yes, sure, you'll be able to catch up. Which of the three women in the photo? There was his wife, there was so his children, and I don't know who the other woman was to the left, but those were the children. Yeah. Um, a lesson, watch what is under your feet. Muslim mosaic. Yes, definitely. So definitely. But I don't know if Pavel, well, this Monte Cristo guy had anything to do with this particular palace because it belonged to his brother Sergei, right? So Sergei inhabited it and then he sold it. So I don't even know whether he had ever been to, well, he must have been to that house, obviously, but he had nothing to do. What was his wife on the right? Or his wife was the lady, with the elderly lady, so closer to him. But the woman in the left, younger one, I have no idea. Yes, that's what the Quran begins with. There is no God greater than Allah. Exactly. You can find this inscription in mosques. You can find it, and these inscriptions would be not on the floor. They would be uh, on under the domes or like above the doorway. Well, yeah, but not on the floor. So it was considered. It is still considered as just the biggest disrespect towards Islam and Muslim people. So obviously you cannot step on these things. But it was just a matter of decoration, obviously, and they must have just copied it. They must have just opened Quran and say, okay, let's just make this one. Let's just put it on the floor. They obviously had no idea what they were doing. And even though Sergei was a well-educated man, I don't think he knew any of that. So, but again, I don't think it's a legend because we were told this. I remember the story, and Oleg was, well, obviously he recorded the tour, so he also was told the story. So, and I don't think that this is something made up. I think it might have happened. It might have happened. The most antique autocorrect. I don't know. No idea, honestly. So yeah, I hope it's clear now about who his. I don't remember what's his last. What was his fourth wife's name? So, but well, it was the lady that was like the elderly lady next to him. Then the three kids. I don't know if they're all the kids, but if he had more. I know he had four wives, but I don't know about the kids. And I don't know who that woman was next to him. I mean, no idea. Maybe it was an elder daughter from the previous marriage. I have no idea. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Cindy. I'm so happy you've been able to join. So for those who missed the previous tours, the first tour that I did today, a one-off, a very short notice tour, the Christmas fair, the charity event in Tbilisi with like 20 something embassies and a lot of local vendors. It's there on my YouTube channel. It's gonna be there for the entire week. It's not going anywhere. And the previous tour that I did just before this tour started, well, I'm going to share the recording around these days. And so two more tours in 1 hour from now, Stone Island. And then in 1 more hour, I'm taking you to the Romanov residence in Alexander Romanov residence. Tomorrow, three tours. It's going to be a live walk in Tbilisi, and I'm going to take you somewhere really special and really hidden. I've been given permission, so hopefully it all works out. You know, I always have to ask permission, and because I don't want, to make anyone angry and just intrude and everything. So hopefully I'll be able to take it there. But I kind of was given permission already, but you never know, so I have to double check tomorrow. But it should work out, and it's a lovely place. I love it. So a lot of architecture, some Art Nouveau for sure, and yeah, so that. Then Misha is going to talk about Mikhail Lermontov, another lecture on Russian literature. with a lot of operas involved, a lot of musical pieces, a lot of old movies as well to add, to the vibe, kind of the visual picture. And then I'm taking it to Jerusalem, to the Temple Mount again. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your interest in my tours. Thank you for finding so much time to join my tours. I know I'm doing a lot of tours. I'm keeping it diverse. Well, just to make it interesting for everyone. And whenever it's just one tour or two or five, I didn't mean for it to be five tours. Honestly, I didn't, but it's just, I could not miss that event too. So anyway, thank you for everything. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. And I will see you in 1 hour. I'm a bit hangoverish from that vodka. What is the Zuika? Sorry, Dorley. What is that? What is that? Ah, the Romanian cherry vodka. I don't know. It wasn't cherry. It was plum vodka, but I forgot the name already. I mean, I would have remembered it. So yeah, that plum vodka definitely hit me hard. Like it was very strong. Like, the chacha that we had last weekend on Sunday, it was like a lime chacha. It was very soft. It was really mild. It was also 40 degrees. Must have been like 40. Yeah, must have been 40, but it was different. It was really mild. And I finished it, by the way, all of it, and the beer too. But that vodka, it was something, definitely called no idea. I have no idea. Maybe I will look it up. So, but that vodka definitely just finished me. Okay, so I guess I need to have something now, and I'm a bit thirsty, so definitely hangoverish. I will see you very soon in 50 minutes from now in St. Petersburg. Thank you for everything. Bye bye.